Is there a silence louder than a telephone that doesn't ring? For many older people living alone, that silence can be deafening, a constant reminder of who isn't there. Hello, I'm John from Texas in the United States, your friend who tells real stories. Stay with us until the end of this incredible story. Want to see your story told here? Get in touch with us. This is a story about that loneliness and the courageous act one woman took to break it. For Maria, a 72-year-old widow, that silence had become the soundtrack of her life. Her small apartment, once filled with the boisterous laughter of her husband and the weekend chaos of her children, was now a pristine, quiet space that felt more like a museum of her past than a home. Her two successful children, living in different states, were good children. They called on holidays, sent flowers, and always ended their calls with a rushed "I love you, Mom." But their love felt distant, a dutiful echo, rather than a warm presence. Loneliness, she had discovered, was a quiet, creeping illness, one that didn't show up on any medical chart, but weakened the spirit all the same. It was this loneliness that amplified her other great fear, her health. Maria had a heart condition, a murmur, her cardiologist now monitored with increasing concern. Every flutter in her chest sent a jolt of fear through her. Am I having a heart attack? Would anyone know? Her relationship with her children had become strained by this fear. In her loneliness, she would call them, her voice tight with anxiety, describing every new symptom. She wanted connection, but she could hear the weariness in their replies. "Mom, did you take your medication? Have you called the cardiologist?" They saw her as a patient, her calls as a list of symptoms, her fears as a medical problem to be managed. This is such a common and painful dynamic. A parent is reaching out for connection, and the children, out of love, respond with practical solutions. Have you ever felt this disconnect on either side of the conversation? Share your experience in the comments. This tension came to a head over the issue of a new vaccination. Her cardiologist strongly recommended it. Her children immediately agreed, their texts lighting up her phone. "Mom, you need to get the vaccination. We booked the appointment for you." They saw it as a simple, logical step for her senior care. For Maria, however, it felt like one more thing being done to her, another reminder of her frailty and her lack of control. She resisted. "I don't know," she'd say. "I don't like putting all these things in my body." Her resistance wasn't truly about the vaccination itself. It was a desperate cry for her own autonomy, a protest against the loneliness that made her feel so powerless. Her children grew frustrated. The conversations became arguments. "Why are you being so difficult, Mom? We're just trying to keep you safe," her son exclaimed. Safe. The word felt ironic. She was safe from the flu, perhaps, but she felt deeply unsafe from the crushing loneliness that was suffocating her spirit. The argument left a bitter silence between them. Days went by with no calls. Maria felt a despair she had never known. Her family, the center of her world, now felt 1,000,000 miles away. Maria's resistance to the vaccine wasn't really about the shot. It was a cry for autonomy. Do you think it's important for older people to maintain control over their own health decisions, even if their family disagrees? Let's discuss this complex issue. Her faith, once a source of comfort, felt distant. She would pray to God, but her prayers felt like they were hitting a ceiling. Was this all that was left of her life? Waiting for the next health scare, alienated from her own children, utterly and completely alone. One evening, feeling particularly low, she was dusting her bookshelf, and her hand brushed against an old, leather-bound Bible, a wedding gift from 50 years ago. On a whim, she carried it to her armchair. She opened it and her eyes landed on the Gospel of John. She read about Jesus and his disciples, about the community they shared, the way they ate together, argued together, and supported one another. She read about the Last Supper, a story she had heard 100 times, but this time, something was different. She wasn't just reading about a historical event. She was reading about a shared meal, a moment of profound connection in the face of fear and uncertainty. Jesus wasn't just a distant figure. He was a person who understood the importance of gathering his loved ones, of breaking bread, of creating a community. The story resonated with a painful clarity. It highlighted everything she was missing. The simple act of a shared meal felt like a treasure she had lost. Tears began to stream down her face, tears not just of sadness, but of a deep, spiritual longing. She closed her eyes, clutching the Bible to her chest, and for the first time in a long time, she prayed a real prayer. It wasn't a list of worries or a plea for her health. It was a simple, desperate cry from the heart. "God," she whispered into the silence, "I am so lonely. Jesus, you were surrounded by people who loved you. Please, show me what to do. I can't do this alone anymore." She didn't expect a miracle, but in that moment of complete surrender, a strange sense of peace settled over her. It wasn't a solution, but it was a beginning. An idea, quiet and small, began to form in her mind. It was an idea that terrified her, one that went against every habit her loneliness had built. It involved her kitchen, a few old recipes, and a risk. The risk of reaching out, not in neediness, but in offering. The next morning, Maria woke up with a resolve she hadn't felt in years. The fear was still there, but now it was accompanied by a flicker of purpose. She walked to the phone, her heart pounding, and dialed her son's number, not to talk about her cardiologist or the vaccination, but to propose her risky, terrifying new idea. When her son answered, his voice was cautious, braced for another difficult conversation about her health. "Hi, Mom. Is everything okay?" Maria took a deep breath, the scent of the old Bible still lingering in her memory. "Everything is fine, dear," she said, and the calmness in her own voice surprised her. "I'm not calling about the doctor or the vaccination. I'm calling to invite you and your sister's family to dinner, here, this Sunday." The silence on the other end was profound. She could almost hear him processing the request. It was so out of character, so different from the anxious, symptom-focused calls he had grown accustomed to. "Dinner? Here?" he finally stammered. "Mom, are you sure you're up for that? That's a lot of work. We can take you out." And there it was, the familiar pattern. The love expressed through management, the care expressed through caution. But this time, Maria didn't retreat. "I am sure," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "I want to cook. I want us to sit at my table together. It's been too long. It's important to me." This is a powerful moment. Maria isn't just asking for a meal. She is reclaiming her role as the matriarch, the nurturer. Have you ever felt that the act of cooking for your family is a profound expression of love? Share a memory in the comments. She didn't plead. She didn't complain. She stated a simple, heartfelt desire. Something in her tone must have broken through his defenses. Maybe it was the absence of fear in her voice, or the presence of a quiet determination. "Okay, Mom," he said slowly. "Okay, I'll talk to Sarah. We'll be there." After she hung up, a wave of panic washed over her. What had she done? Cooking for 6 people? Her heart pounded and, for a moment, the old fear returned. But then she looked at the Bible, still open on her armchair. and a different feeling took over. Purpose. The next few days were a blur of activity, but it was a healing kind of activity. For the first time in years, Maria had a reason to leave her apartment that wasn't a doctor's appointment. She made a shopping list, her handwriting a little shaky, but her mind clear. Walking through the grocery store, she wasn't just a senior citizen at risk of falling. She was a woman on a mission. She chose fresh vegetables, a good cut of meat, all the ingredients for the pot roast her husband had loved so much. Each item in her cart felt like a small victory against the inertia that had held her captive. The physical effort was immense. Her back ached, and she had to take frequent breaks. But the work energized her. The simple, rhythmic act of chopping vegetables, of stirring a sauce, of kneading dough for bread, felt like a prayer. It was a physical manifestation of her love for her family. Her kitchen, once a sterile, unused space, came alive with the smells of garlic and onions, of baking bread and simmering stock. The silence of her apartment was replaced by the gentle hum of the oven and the sound of her own humming, a tune she hadn't realized she'd forgotten. She was creating, nurturing, preparing a space for connection. This was her act of worship, her way of honoring the community she had read about, the community she so desperately wanted to rebuild. On Sunday morning, she woke up before the sun, not from insomnia, but from anticipation. She set the table with her best china, the plates that were reserved for special occasions. She polished the silverware and put out the good wine glasses. As she stood back to look at the table, she saw more than just plates and forks. She saw an invitation. She saw hope. When her children and grandchildren arrived, the initial moments were awkward. They walked in with a cautious energy, their eyes scanning her for signs of fatigue or illness. They had brought dessert, a store-bought cake, a well-intentioned gesture that said, "We don't want you to overdo it." They saw her beautifully set table, the delicious smells wafting from the kitchen, and they were confused. This was not the frail, anxious mother they had been arguing with on the phone. "Mom, you did all this?" her daughter Sarah asked, a note of disbelief in her voice. "It looks wonderful." Maria simply smiled. "I wanted to. Now come, sit down." The tension at this dinner table is something many families can relate to, where big, unspoken issues hide behind small talk about health. How does your family navigate these difficult, unspoken topics? Does it take one brave person to finally speak the truth? The conversation at the dinner table started as it always did. "So, did you reschedule your appointment for the vaccination?" her son asked, getting straight to the point. "And what did the cardiologist say at your last checkup?" Maria felt a familiar tightening in her chest, but she took a quiet breath and looked at her children, not with defiance, but with a deep, loving sadness. "We can talk about that later," she said softly. "But first, I want to tell you a story. Not a story about my symptoms or my fears. A story about why I made us all this dinner." She told them about the silence, about the profound loneliness that had become her constant companion. She described how her days were measured not in hours, but in the spaces between phone calls. She confessed that her constant calls about her health weren't just about her heart condition. They were a desperate, clumsy way of trying to feel connected, of trying to hear their voices. She saw a flicker of understanding, of guilt, in their eyes. Then, she told them about opening her old Bible, about reading the story of the Last Supper, and being struck not by the theology, but by the simple human act of a shared meal. "I realized," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "that Jesus knew how important it was to gather his people, to look them in the eye, to break bread with them. And I realized that's what we've lost. We talk on the phone, we text, but we don't connect. I'm not just a list of medical conditions to be managed. I'm your mother, and I'm lonely." She spoke of her prayer, the simple plea to God for help. "I asked God to show me what to do," she continued. "And the answer wasn't a miracle cure for my heart or a sudden end to my loneliness. The answer was this table. The answer was to stop waiting for you to come to me in my need, and instead to invite you into my home, to serve you, to create a space where we could be a family again. Not just a patient and her caregivers." She looked at her children, their faces a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. "I will get the vaccination," she said quietly, looking directly at them. "I will do it not because you told me to, but because I want to be healthy enough to have many more Sundays like this. I want to be here with you, but I need you to be here with me too. Not just on the other end of a phone line, but here, at this table." The room was silent, but it was a different kind of silence. It wasn't the empty, lonely silence of before. It was a silence filled with unspoken emotions, with years of miscommunication finally being cleared away. Her son looked at his plate, then at his mother, and for the first time, he seemed to truly see her. He saw the tired lines around her eyes, but he also saw the fierce love and the resilient spirit that had always been there, hidden beneath a layer of fear and anxiety. Her daughter Sarah was the first to break the silence. She reached across the table and placed her hand over her mother's. Her eyes were glistening with tears. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she whispered, her voice cracking with an emotion Maria hadn't heard in years. "I had no idea. We were so focused on your health, on the logistics of your senior care, that we forgot about your heart, your real heart." Her son cleared his throat, unable to meet his mother's gaze for a moment. "She's right, Mom. We messed up. We treated you like a problem to be solved, not like our mother. We stopped listening." This moment of apology and understanding is what so many families long for. Do you believe it's the responsibility of adult children to care for their parents' emotional health as well as their physical health? Let's talk about this in the comments. It was an apology, a raw and honest admission that opened the floodgates. The rest of the dinner was different. The tension was gone, replaced by a tender, careful effort to reconnect. They didn't talk about the cardiologist or the vaccination anymore. Instead, they asked Maria about her week, about the book she was reading, about her memories of their father. For the first time in a long time, they were simply a family sharing a meal. That Sunday dinner was not a one-time event. It became a ritual, a sacred space carved out of their busy lives. Every Sunday, they gathered at Maria's table. The store-bought cakes were replaced by homemade pies that Sarah and the grandkids would bring. The conversations deepened. Maria learned about the challenges her son was facing at work, the friendship drama her granddaughter was navigating at school, and they, in turn, learned about the woman their mother was becoming. They saw her renewed energy, her sense of purpose. They saw her reading her Bible with a quiet joy. Her faith, no longer a private comfort, but a source of visible strength. The phone calls during the week changed too. They were no longer interrogations about her health, but genuine check-ins. Just calling to say hi, Mom, became a common and cherished phrase. Maria, feeling seen and heard, found that her anxiety began to recede. The flutters in her chest still came and went, but they no longer held the same terrifying power over her. She knew now that if she fell, someone would be there, not just a paramedic, but a son or a daughter who truly saw her. A few weeks later, she had her appointment with the cardiologist. Her son took the day off work to go with her. He sat beside her in the waiting room, not scrolling through his phone, but talking with her. In the examination room, he held her hand as the doctor explained the results. He asked questions, not as a manager, but as a concerned and loving son. And when the doctor brought up the vaccination again, Maria agreed without hesitation. She looked at her son, and he smiled a real grateful smile. Getting the shot was no longer an act of submission. It was an act of love, a commitment to her health, so she could continue to be present for her family. Her renewed sense of purpose didn't stop at her own front door. She saw the same loneliness she had felt in the eyes of her neighbors in her senior living community. She saw Mr. Henderson sitting by himself in the common room day after day, and Mrs. Gable, who rarely left her apartment. Her heart, once consumed with its own aches, now ached for them. Maria turned her own pain into a purpose to help others. It's such a beautiful act of faith. Have you ever seen someone turn a personal struggle into a source of strength and service for their community? Share that inspiring story. Guided by her faith and the example of Jesus, who always sought out the lonely and the lost, Maria decided to act. She started small. She baked an extra loaf of bread and took it to Mr. Henderson. The conversation was brief, but it was a start. The following week, she invited both him and Mrs. Gable for a simple cup of tea in her apartment. Slowly, a small community began to form around her kitchen table. Her Sunday supper with her family had inspired a Wednesday tea with her neighbors. They would talk, share stories, read passages from the Bible if they felt inclined, or simply sit in companionable silence. Maria had found a new ministry. Her loneliness had not been a curse. It had been a training ground. God had allowed her to feel that profound emptiness so she could truly understand and serve others who were lost in it. The story ends with Maria's apartment full of life. The silence is gone. It's a powerful reminder that we have the power to change our own circumstances. What's one small step you could take this week to bring more connection into your own life or the life of someone you know? Her life was no longer defined by what she had lost: her husband, her old routine, her physical strength. It was now defined by what she was building: connection, community, and a legacy of love. Her apartment, once a silent monument to the past, was now a warm, vibrant center of life, filled with the aroma of fresh tea and the gentle murmur of friends sharing their stories. Her heart condition was still a part of her life, but it was no longer the center of it. The center was her faith, her family, and her newfound purpose. The silence was finally gone, replaced by the beautiful, life-affirming sound of connection. The story of Maria is a powerful reminder that the greatest pains of old age, loneliness, illness, feeling like a burden, are not a life sentence. It teaches us that communication rooted in love can heal the deepest family wounds. It shows that our faith in God can do more than just comfort us. It can give us a new and powerful purpose, right when we think our useful days are behind us. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own family, or gave you a sense of hope, please take a moment to leave a like on this video. It truly helps our stories reach more people who need to hear them. And please subscribe to Stories Beyond 50 so you can join us for every new story we share. And now, we want to create our community right here in the comments. We want to hear from you. How important is family in your life? And how do you navigate the difficult conversations about health and old age? Has your faith in God and Jesus ever helped you heal a broken relationship or find purpose in a time of loneliness? Your experience is a beacon of wisdom for someone else. Please share your thoughts with us. And if you feel more private, but you believe in the power of family and faith, just write the single word family in the comments below as a testament to the love that binds us all. Every comment is read and cherished. You are the reason we tell these stories. Thank you for being a part of our community. God bless you, and we will see you in the next story.